tell us what Ukraine's response has been to this latest news from Interfax?
Well, I don't know an official response from Kiev. We've just been trying to ascertain what the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense here in Crimea says, and they have downplayed this ultimatum, saying it's not necessarily an official one. There have been ultimatums before, and they have passed without any kind of aggression on the ground. So, we'll have to wait and see about this. I would imagine that puts the government in Kiev, though, into a state of very real concern. We've heard from the Ministry of Defense that they don't have the military wherewithal. It's quite clear to resist the Russian army, neither would they want to. And this is certainly not the challenge that Arseniy Yatsenyuk, the new Prime Minister, wished to have on his hands at this early stage in his interim leadership. Even though he has described as the country on the brink of war, and Russia's recent declaration is tantamount to a war declaration, Sarah.
Yet again, just give us some idea of how people are receiving some of this information, and if they're surprised that they haven't heard from Vladimir Putin on any of this yet.
Well, I think that is one of the astonishing things, that in the whole unraveling of this situation in Crimea, as it sort of descends into a crisis whereby the whole world and global markets and everything else is sort of collapsing around his ears, President Putin has stayed silent. Perhaps that should be no surprise for a man who has the intelligence background that he does. I think that the pro-Russian, ethnic Russian community here know and like President Putin in the same way as he has such a loyal following amongst his own domestic audience. They believe that he is a strong man, that he has their backs, and therefore they don't resent this military presence in this region of Ukraine at all. They think that it is a sort of peacekeeping force. The fact that his troops are here without any kind of identifying mark, to a certain extent, dulls the effect of a kind of invasion to people here. But I think that there are many others on the Crimean Peninsula, let alone in the whole rest of Ukraine, who are deeply worried about his intentions, which appear to be, from this standing, a kind of annexation of Crimea. The question is whether he will then advance beyond Crimea into eastern Ukraine. Sarah, I was talking to one of the sort of heads of the junior arm of the Tatars, the ethnic Tatar minority here, yesterday. He said he felt that what Russia was trying to do was to create a kind of buffer zone between Russia and the European Union, which was de jure still under Ukraine's parameters, but de facto had a pro-Russian government in place and was pretty much controlled by Russia. And that is what you see in Crimea. And last week, a pro-Russian leader, who incidentally only had about 3 or 4 seats in the parliament last time there was an election here. This time he's been put into place under the auspices of gunmen. He has announced that the security forces in this region are under his control, and effectively this pro-Russian government is in place, and this place is functioning in a pro-Russian capacity with the backing of the Russian military. It is pretty much annexed as is, Sarah.
All right, I want to ask you about troop movements, because we've heard of Russian troop movements. We've also heard the Ukraine calling up its troops. What does it feel like being there now for the people that are on the Crimean Peninsula, which is really the hotspot of this at the moment?
Well, it's strange. I don't think that the Tatars, many of the Ukrainian nationals, are necessarily coming out onto the streets. I think it is important to stress that most people here feel Ukrainian first and foremost, but there is a huge amount of worry at the concentration of the sort of east-west divide that is happening on their territory right now. I don't think that this military presence is the most disturbing factor, but people, because it's as disturbing as it could be, because it's been done done in such a low-key way. But certainly the streets, the markets, they are less full than normal. People are staying at home. The Tatars, for example, have told their communities to keep a low profile. You know, this is not an area which has seen ethnic tensions between the various groupings that exist here, but that is, of course, the very real fear, that beyond a fight between Ukrainian and Russian military, that there then may arise fights between ethnic Tatars and the pro-Russian ethnic Russians here, and that is the kind of thing that, you know, the people on the ground are very, very scared of, and why there have been such calls to keep calm, to keep quiet, and that is maybe why, you know, there aren't so many people out on the streets. People are probably listening and watching their television sets in their sitting rooms, which, incidentally, Sarah, serve to consolidate this sort of division, because most of the Russian-speaking people here are watching Russian state media and believing what it tells them. Sarah?
All right, thank you so much. Our Diana Magne live for us in Mariupol, Ukraine, which is really sort of the crux of all that is going on and all that's being talked about internationally as well. We also want to mention that we are waiting in just a few moments. We are hoping to hear from some of the officials of the EU. They are in an emergency meeting that is expected to get out very shortly at the UN headquarters in Brussels, and we will go to that as soon as they get out of that meeting and start to speak about what their plans are when it comes to what is happening in the Ukraine. Let's go now to our Andrew Cutchins now. He is the director and senior fellow of the Russian and Eurasia program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.